Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Well, that was random.
Exceptional Radio. Good afternoon. It's the 2nd of October. We're in the final third of the year. Is pandemic over?
Fuck no. Not even close. People are still dying by the thousands.
Oh, I know, but like...
People are trying to act like it's over, which is wild to see that shit happen.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I have to constantly remind my mom, like, hey, just because the other people are letting their guards down, don't you do the same shit? Because I'm like, it's like, people are still fucking dying from this shit, man. It's really crazy to see the desire to consume, usurp people's capacity to gauge danger to themselves. It's like,
well, it seems like the bivalent vaccine is even under-marketed at this point.
Yeah. Well, because it's not cover free, so they have to like sell it, which nobody wants to. I'm not paying for that fucking shit because of the way that they made it happen. I'm not about to go from the government funding this vaccine, paying for it again, to then having them be like, no, now you're on your own, and then me having to fucking pay for it out of pocket. It's like, nah, I'm not playing that game. I'm going to continue to mask up, but I'm not about to like let the government declare the fucking thing over and then be like, well, there's this vaccine that we actually financed for the newest variant, but you actually got to pay for that yourself. Nah, fuck that. Those companies can burn. They can fucking lose all their shit because they're not being marketed, and nobody's going to realize that they can go get it. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, guess what? I'm not actually it doesn't, if it was like $1, maybe, but they're going to do some ridiculous shit where it's probably like $40 or $120 or something stupid where it's like, no, we can't be financing that shit and then having to pay for it as citizens because our government is trying to play capitalist fucking cosplay.
So what I've been reading about the current state of COVID, I guess, is that the current variant is nowhere near as severe as Delta, which was really killing people. And Omicron, while very, very, very successful at spreading, wasn't killing people at the rate that Delta was, or the Beta.
It's because they're downplaying long COVID. These are the same people that are making it seem like long COVID isn't a problem. It's like, yeah, it's not killing people, but it's still causing long COVID, causing fucking brain fog and making it harder for them to breathe.
It predisposes people for stroke still.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That's the
so
weird
it's like,
part.
Yeah, it's not killing people as much, or as like this specific variant isn't as fatal, but it still has horrible side effects.
That's the danger.
Basically,
that's the part that gets me is that, you know, the numbers are all like, yeah, we're in the clear, it's looking good. And, you know, every horror movie I've ever seen, every science fiction, dystopian, or, you know, bleak outlook of the future, this is the moment when it actually all starts to collapse, when everyone gets comfortable. I mean, this is like a tale old as time. And not some Beauty and the Beast level shit where it's like, oh yeah, we can fix this with some songs about some broken fucking plates and shit. It's our economies are all in kind of a tailspin. Like we're headed towards recession. The world's economies are in tailspin. We're all headed towards recession. Our supply chains have never quite recovered. The jobs outlook is like, oh yeah, everything's looking good. oh God, please don't let them find out the real numbers type shit.
Well,
And
there were too many Walmarts, there were too many Starbucks,
Yeah.
there were too many fucking car dealerships, there were too many new cars. There was too much fucking consumption, and it needs to recede. That shit needed to fucking happen.
did you read about Ford having to halt production because they ran out of blue ovals?
No, I didn't see that. I'm not surprised though.
Like,
It's like,
imagine being the person whose only job is
Jesus
making sure that
Christ.
they have enough blue ovals to meet production, and it's like, buddy, he had one job.
wow. I mean, that's not surprising at all. That's the state of fucking capitalism. They just don't know what to prioritize.
It's not even
Their
a
shit
computer
is
chip.
super arbitrary. Yeah, exactly. Like that's a stupid thing to fucking halt production, to have like probably outsourced it to the point where they got to wait for that shit coming from China. It's like that has no business being an American car anymore, like, or calling itself American, when I think it's like 75% of most of the parts, and it's not all of them, but there are Ford cars that have like a significant portion of their parts coming from Chinese factories.
I'm pretty sure that
And then
the
they're built
Maverick,
here.
I think the Maverick is entirely built in Mexico.
Yeah, there's a few that are also built in
I
Mexico.
think the
too.
Escape
So
is
then
also
it's
built
like,
in Mexico, and so is the Bronco Sport.
yeah,
Like,
there are a few,
that
and that's
entire
where it's like it's
family.
not every model.
You know, it's more like built Ford tough to acquire. and Chevy,
But
like
there's no
Chevy, like a
there's no
rock, it sits
shame.
in a parking lot because they don't have any chips. For old trucks,
There's like
you know, they've still got vehicles from like 2000 and 2001 that they were unable to put chips into and deliver because they were sitting in a fucking parking lot waiting for chips. And then they released the next model year. And then the next
God.
model year got released because, you know, now it's 2022.
well, and there's no shame in being an international organization, but they've built so much of their identity on being an American car company that it's like they have to basically lie and be like, yeah, we're American, except all our shit's coming from China, and then we assemble it here sometimes in Mexico.
I'm pretty sure that GM's global leader is Buick. It's not Chevrolet. It's not their trucks. Only in America do their trucks sell like hotcakes. In the rest of the world, is Buick. Buick is the marquee brand because you can't get a Cadillac outside of North America.
Nobody wants that shit outside of North America.
Well, yeah.
The fuck do they need a boat on wheels for outside of North America? Everybody else understands that smaller, more agile cars are better all around, and they're not wanting these fucking stupid American boats on wheels.
Or they take a bus, which is gigantic and can haul all of the random crap they need.
Yeah. So I'm very American, like, self grandiosity, while not understanding that our shit has been way left behind on every level, but still allowing Americans to think that they're the best in the world on whatever front they think they're the best at, just because our inflationary currency, hyperinflationary currency, makes it seem like we have the biggest GDP. It's like this house of cards was always destined to fail. It's a matter of like which generation gets the hot potato. And the boomers have been trying to blame our generation for everything, from like all their stupid fucking dumb restaurants that they kept going to that should have never been open, that started fucking finally closing up, to like Blockbuster Video and shit like that that should have well, let me be
Blockbuster
fair.
tried to transition to
They
streaming.
tried, but they didn't do it right. They like overpaid for some website shit that they way over, like, if they knew any better, because they were run by boomers, they wouldn't have paid that much. So that's what basically, it's like they don't want to they don't want to cede control when they need to, and that's what ends up killing a lot of their fucking organizations and corporations from the previous generation. Is like these motherfuckers who can't open PDFs trying to make decisions about where the company should go tech wise, and nobody being able to push back. And it's like a lot of that stuff is, you know, yeah, they tried, but they failed miserably. And it's just this type of perpetual inability to change with the times is why the American economy is like so quickly falling apart, but still trying to lean back on military industrial, but they can't even do that shit anymore because of fucking COVID. You can't have people in like highly concentrated places for long periods because they're gonna get fucking sick, and it's gonna end up like a lot of these submarines where it's like they had to fucking quarantine because it was fucking middle of a pandemic and it's isolated air. Everybody's breathing the same fucking recirculated air and shit. So
talk about a death capsule.
Right. Considering a lot of the deaths in the Navy were from fucking accidents in the last couple of years. They were just, I don't know what the fuck was going on. They were just having accidents left and right. And that was killing a lot of people in the military.
Boats crashing into each other.
Yeah, it was real bad for a second. And I think it's like there's incompetence all around. Like the Russian military is, I don't even know if we can call it a military at this point. The Russian conscription force.
It's are
poor people?
They're conscripted if they're entered into, if they're drafted, right? If they're just forced into it, right?
I mean, who isn't that at this point though? Like, I'm sure there are people who are.
Oh, there were all those people that flooded the airlines and tried to leave Russia when he started.
But okay, so this is one of those things. Their population has been dwindling for multiple years now because people have been fleeing the country to avoid shit like this. So this is where I mean, like, even the people that were there at the beginning were basically conscripts because like nobody wants to, like, they're like, again, not everybody's like this, but no person in their right mind is trying to roll into fucking Ukraine in a rusted out tank and try to challenge them, not knowing if you have enough fucking gasoline. And that's why they started like bolting, because they were all basically doing it under duress. So as soon as they got the opportunity to be like, oh shit, my tank's out of gas, fuck, we're gonna leave it, they ran because they didn't want to be there in the first place, because they don't actually believe in the fucking cause. Otherwise they'd probably be winning. So this is where I mean, like, in the sense of it's not all about weapons, because to a certain degree, the weapons have been fairly equivalent. Like, until the United States started really sending weapons over, it was like fairly equal, and Russia was like suffering significant losses early on. And I do think it's just because a lot of the soldiers that were present were there under duress in the first place, which is, again, they already had a dwindling population. And now it's dwindling even more because of the war, and people are flooding, leaving the country in a way that it was like, it was happening, but it's even worse now. So I'm like, when that's, Russia has been reduced visibly in the sense of like, when we're trying to use Russia as the specter of the military threat that we need to arm ourselves against, but they can't hold their own shit against fucking Ukraine in an invasion. Well, we can't use them as a scare tactic anymore. Like, those motherfuckers have visibly been reduced to on the same level as a country. What is it, like, I think 40 million people or something? It's not all about population, but Russia's about half the size of Nigeria at this point.
Wait, 40 million? So, that's like the size of Canada.
Right. So Russia couldn't Red Dawn Canada, let alone Red Dawn actual United States of America. So like that fantasy of these like hick motherfuckers stockpiling their weapons and fighting Russian military. Well, I'm sorry, they're not making it this far, bro. Their
Wait,
shit
no,
ain't good
they can
enough.
join the French Foreign Legion or something like that. They can go to Ukraine and fight Russians if they want to. That can happen right now. They can
Right.
join private
Well, there are
security and
people supposedly doing that.
oh yeah,
Um,
a few of them have even died, I believe. But
mhm.
it's perfectly reasonable and acceptable in this current climate for people to just hop on a plane and go contact the right people. I have no idea who they'd contact, but they contact the right people and they hop on a Jeep and they drive out to a fucking war zone and start shooting at shit because Call of Duty.
Right. I don't know when it became patriotic for Americans to go fight for the Ukrainian military. I'm not really sure how that math
Maybe that
works
just
out.
falls under modern warfare then. Whichever video game it is. I mean, they're going to be there for like what's another one we can throw in there? Fortnite, and they can do their Team Fortress stuff all night long, and hang out with other sweaty people in a trench or in a busted up building, like afraid to turn on a flashlight because it'll let somebody know where they are because they might get shot at. That doesn't sound like fun. That sounds like the worst parts of war movies, but real.
Pretty much. I mean, but at the same time, this is like, okay, the way that our experiences with war have been reduced to like film experiences,
Or video games.
it's like, yeah, or video games. Like they'll show the footage of that like 16-year-old boy drone pilot or whatever who took out a bunch of Russians. It's like this 16-year-old boy is gonna have fucking trauma. And if he doesn't have trauma, that's even more fucked up because he's out here killing people at fucking 16, and either he's not super traumatized or he is. Neither one is good. But the way that it's like made to seem as if he's some hero that Americans should aspire to be or should be like, praise this fucking 16-year-old kid for defending his motherland by killing these faceless Russian whatever militants, infidels, whatever the fucking word is at the time. Good for, we should all be like this 16-year-old Ukrainian. And it's like they're lionizing murder and reducing it to these Call of Duty fucking Saving Private Ryan clips to then
Well, I think the reality is that Russia is definitely not the Soviet Union, and the threat of the Soviet Union was different because there was a different political and social climate at the time. But Russia is like the Soviet Union's gas station, and somehow retained control of its military and missiles. And unfortunately, because of that, they still have some kind of big stick that they can wave around, a hatchet that they can toss, and they're gonna just go jump in the sewer next thing you know, and you're gonna have to smoke them out. Be just like that idiot fucking dude who threatened people downtown and got smoked out of the sewers. Which I've been thinking about that. It's like that's got to be like the worst sign of a society that we've got people sleeping in the sewer system. That's like the biggest fucking failure of a society right there. It's like, hold on. And not just in like a city. In a city, yeah, that makes sense with population density and opportunity. But like Bloomington's not a fucking big city. That sewer system has been built within my lifetime, or rebuilt within my lifetime. It's not. This isn't like Las Vegas, where there's entire underground structures that exist because of the way the place was constructed, or New York, or Chicago, or St. Louis, or any giant ass city. We barely have like mass transit. Our mass transit's a joke. It's actually pretty impressive for the size of the city, but still is a joke.
Yeah, it's definitely a joke. But considering like some cities don't even have like what we have, it's like
It's still pretty impressive, but it's
oof,
still
yeah.
that's that weird. It's like it's not, I don't want to say a slippery slope, because it's not even a slope. It's like it's a smooth gradient that transitions from, like, yeah, we've got public transportation, we've got buses, we've got a functional bus system within a certain area of town, and then there's overlap with the university's transit system, but not really. It's only, and then there's a rural route system that I don't know how to use that. That's one of those things that, like, unless you're on that route, you don't even, it probably wouldn't even be part of it wouldn't even be on the radar. I think if public transportation worked, there wouldn't be things like Uber or Lyft or even extensive taxi systems, although taxi systems make sense if they're regulated.
Well, there's like different variations on it, and it's like no city should leave a citizen in a place where they can't get back to their residence, and it also shouldn't leave a person without a residence. And it's like if every city just like took care of those two things, basically, it would be much easier to isolate actual crime instead of trying to over police people who were just following the rules or like
Just trying to keep their head above water, even.
right, or just like not doing anything that violates anyone else's space or person, because that's where it's like rules are meant effectively to keep people from violating people's space or person or property. So as long as someone's not doing that, it's like they don't really have to be following the rules necessarily. Like as long as they're not violating someone or something that does not belong to them. And that's like the basic premise for like a societal agreement, which is then why leaving people to be like homeless or not have a ride or be mobile and then be like, oh, that's not your fault. You don't have a fucking car in this horribly designed infrastructure. It's like, yeah, you can, you know, somehow you got here because your parents had you or whatever, but we're not going to help you get around. That's on you. If you don't have a car, fucking tough. It's not our fault we don't have buses, even though it actually is our fault, or that we don't have a system of like getting you a car to get to where you need to go. It's like not our fault, even though it is our fault. So I think like, what was it? The blue car rental. It's like the way the Indianapolis attempt to give anyone access to cars by making these like rental cars available at these specific spots. It's like that's a good step in the right direction, but it wasn't accessible enough for people to actually use it. So then that's one thing, but then because it also was like I think it was like a monthly subscription, or I don't know how they incurred the cost, but if people are paying beyond just the gas that they use, which if it were electric vehicles and they had solar chargers, there are many ways those things should have just basically been free for people to use. As long, you know, you can't really steal it when it's like the city's property and they can GPS tag. There's ways that they could have made those vehicles unstealable, which they just didn't put enough effort in. But they're like, oh, we'll put up a paywall instead of making it free, so people don't just start driving it like their own personal vehicle. Where it's like, well, who fucking cares if there was enough? It wouldn't matter if they just drove it like their own personal vehicle. But this economy thrives on arbitrary limitation of abundance and scarcity as a means of generating value, and it's done that for too long. Where it's like that shit's not sustainable. But it's like it shouldn't. If the communities were walkable, everyone wouldn't need a car. And the idea of walkable communities sounds like far-fetched in America, but they do it plenty of other places.
Man, when I was a teenager, we walked everywhere.
Yeah,
Literally
I still walk
everywhere.
Possible.
You can walk everywhere that you need to go in Bloomington. And if you can't walk there, it's because it's raining and you don't have enough time.
Right. Right. Well, I was gonna say it's probably because you didn't manage your time well. That's pretty much what it comes down to. Is like if you know where you're going and you know how long it takes, you probably can walk there unless it's like even across town you can walk and then take the bus or take the bus like just across town in the first place. So it's like you don't really actually have to drive even when it's raining, because the bus stops have like not all of them, but most of them have covers. So it's like it's still fairly easy to move around even in like not the best weather. But
there's only a few sections of Bloomington that are difficult to. You can get to them and then you've got to walk around. Like there's some neighborhoods where the buses just don't go into.
Yeah.
But they go to the edge of those neighborhoods. A lot of they would almost be bedroom communities, but they're not actually outside of Bloomington, like Blue Ridge or Hyde Park or Park Ridge East, things like that. They're just like right on the outside edge of Bloomington. And then there are a bunch of places on the south side, and I think those are accessible via rural route. But again, I don't know where those actually run. I've never had to take them, so it never occurred to me to engage in that level of discovery.
Well, but it's just also still, it's even not very walkable for as much as it is walkable. Like there's places on 10th Street where there's no fucking sidewalk. You're like, okay, I guess I'll just run to the next sidewalk somewhere. It's like on you to risk your life walking that. It's like if you got hit there, people would blame you for walking instead of being upset that there's no actual sidewalk in those places, which is frustrating. It's like that's the victim blaming society, but there's just so much propaganda that makes Americans prefer the person in the car over the person who got hit, whether they're like on a bike or on foot. It's like, well, were they in the street? It's like, that's not the fucking point, so it's really crazy.
Wait, we're supposed to yield to pedestrians. It doesn't matter if they're in the street. We're supposed to try to avoid them.
And only on campus. It's like, I think it's meant to be a statewide law, but they only enforce it on campus. Yeah, it's definitely meant to be a statewide. Well, and it's only in crosswalks.
Yeah.
So like you just can't that's part of the problem is that rule only applies in crosswalks. So if somebody just starts crossing the street, they're jaywalking.
Yeah, jaywalking
so if they get hit,
technically illegal. You're still supposed to try to not hit humans with your car.
But that's also why it's like these rules are like really, they're not consistent because it's like a person jaywalking is not paying attention to their surroundings in a way that it's like, well, you should just go. It sounds easy to be like, well, you should just go to a crosswalk, but some of these places don't actually have crosswalks where you're like, well, I guess I'll run to the closest sidewalk as quickly as possible. But in that gap, you have no choice but to break the law technically, because there's no legal crosswalk that's designated for pedestrians. Yeah. And it's like, is not just that those gaps exist, it's that in those gaps, the person driving the car that hits the pedestrian will still most likely end up getting the benefit of the doubt because that pedestrian crossed in that illegal pathway.
Well,
And it's like, even though they had no choice, then the car gets deferred to in that situation. And it's just really crazy that vehicles get preference over human bodies in that type, like at any point in that type of exchange.
you know, it's funny, like, in that scenario, I can actually see somebody trying to sue the pedestrian.
They'd probably win.
Yeah.
They'd straight up probably win.
I wonder
Like,
how many.
if
I wonder
they-
how many people get to sue deer every year.
Well, but that's also why if you hit a deer, your fucking insurance will be like, oh, act of God, here's your money. But it also depends. If you were breaking the law and hit the deer, then they won't.
Man, I'm pretty sure that there's some deer out there that are smarter than some humans about crossing roads. Like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
like
Definitely.
if a deer crossing the road is an act of God, then an idiot crossing the road should also be an act of God. Presuming one is
But
driving
then-
within, like, you know, the
But
speed
then
limit.
that declares that declares the person devoid of responsibility. So
Yeah,
like,
no, that can't happen.
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, just because the
Got
deer
this tangled web of
sentient,
rules.
then the person, yeah, it like, then it equates a person crossing the street to fucking a deer as if they're just mindless, and it gets real weird because then you see like people hitting migrants crossing roads and then getting away with it because the laws are like,
I thought it was an antelope.
no, they don't even hide the fact that they know it was a person. It's
Oh,
just
that's
a matter of
terrible.
like, yeah, it's like
I swore it was an armadillo.
the way, and it's like the people aren't doing it intentionally. It's like these crossings will be like, they'll put up signs that are like warning that there's frequent people running across the highway, and it's like that is meant to alert people that it's like, hey, if you see somebody, obviously you should try to stop. But it's like that is also not going to be enough to warn a person who's actually put in that scenario when they need to stop quickly. If somebody's like trying to run across the highway,
It takes like
So it's
200
like-
something feet, 250 feet to stop for going 70 miles an hour. And
Yeah,
down
and
down
that's
on the
where-
southern border, people fly like 80, 90, 100 miles an hour.
yeah. So it's like the reality of physics then makes it so that these two things end up putting people in situations where they actually have to test the law. And in a lot of cases, it'll be like, yeah, a person
Man,
who's like immigrating gets killed, and the person who hits them gets like no real repercussions because the laws are written in such a way. It's like, oh, because they were running across the road, they're not really it's like almost as if they're a fucking deer at that point.
So-
They might as well be a deer.
in 2020, when NHTSA released all of their survivability crash data, there's a pretty distinct curve that describes survivability during a collision inside the vehicle. And then it also describes survivability percentages as related to speed. It's all correlated to speed for anyone outside of the vehicle. Pedestrians, people on bicycles, people in other vehicles, people in buildings, things like that. And all of this stuff they gathered all the information using old standards with the previous weight data that they used for their sleds. And now they're using an object with a larger face and more mass. I think it's gone up from like 3 to 4,500 pounds or something like that. And they've increased the speed up to 40 miles an hour to better reflect the average impact speed, like velocity at impact. And everyone's safer in modern cars across the board. Every year, cars get safer, trucks get safer, SUVs, everything gets safer inside the vehicle. But every year, for everyone else, everything gets worse. The numbers for pedestrians keep going up, cyclists too. Other vehicles, they go down because the vehicles are safer. Buildings are in just as much jeopardy, if not more, because there are more big trucks on the road and there are more electric vehicles on the road. And electric vehicles, while they might be the size of a crossover or a small SUV, they weigh as much as a full-size truck. And so, mass and transfer of kinetic energy and stuff like that, physics.
This is the same country that tried to make an electric Hummer.
Well, they did
this country is, but they had to fucking delay it because
they ran out
of many reasons. Yeah, but it's like this is the country. It's a very unserious place. It doesn't make any sense. Like, yeah, we're gonna build an electric fucking 10,000-pound fucking vehicle for families to get groceries in.
Our roads can't even withstand that kind of shit regularly.
Yeah, so
roads have to be specially engineered for heavy-duty vehicles and big trucks, not heavy-duty weighted small vehicles that put all that mass in a smaller footprint.
And if it went in the opposite direction, like if vehicles were super light, they would be able to have things built into them that would like effectively work as like foam padding for people so that it's not going to have as much of an impact if they get into a wreck or some shit. And it's like the need for all of these crumple zones and impact resistant zones is because
there's a culture of going fast that wants to survive when they drive into a tree or another vehicle at speed.
It's like it's a person who flies off of a motorcycle going 120 miles an hour.
Oh, they're definitely
they're gonna
feel that shit.
Well, not if they're this happens all the time.
Oh, no, I know. It's true. They go sliding because they got all that the equipment to allow them to slide.
Get up and walk away.
Yeah.
They get up and walk away, bro. That's 120 miles an hour. So what I mean is not the speed. It's the tremendous amount of weight and the inability to react to that tremendous amount of weight moving in a single direction, whereas somebody on a motorcycle can just fucking flip off.
Yeah,
they literally do that shit all the time.
But when they're on real roads, when they're on real roads, and there's a name.
But
for
that's why they don't go 100. That's why
they call them squids, and they don't have to go 120. They only have to go like 60, and they smear across the pavement, and then they scrape them off the ground.
But that's why actual smart motorcyclists don't do dumb shit like fucking wheelies or endos and endos and fucking
riding around in sneakers.
Do all the shit that like people with toxoplasmosis do, but like people with self-control and discipline and understanding, they can flip off of a motorcycle at 120 miles an hour and barely get a fucking bruise or scratch because they had the proper gear, they had the proper technique to roll out, and they had the proper understanding of physics to be like, hey, the only time I'm going to go that fast
you're describing
is on a track.
You're describing
that's why they don't die.
Perfect conditions, and
that's not even those are
ideal conditions.
Frequent. That shit happens all the
fucking
time.
I get it. No, I know, I do. But that's also idealized conditions, and I'm operating under the impression that most people on the roads are operating under like less than the best or ideal conditions.
Because they're stupid. They're not. That's where.
But we still have a culture of speed that wants to go fast, even in unideal conditions.
We have a culture of non-specialists doing shit they have no fucking business doing. Most people have no business operating 2,000, 4,000-pound vehicles just because they took a fucking driver's test. They don't understand physics enough to be operating vehicles that heavy. They should be operating bicycles, most of them. And most of them shouldn't even be operating bicycles. They should just be fucking walking because they don't understand physics enough. These motherfuckers will step out in the road when a 2,000-pound vehicle is coming 40 miles an hour. That person barely should be walking. let alone operating a 2,000-pound vehicle just because they took the test. So this is what I mean. Like, it's not the speed. It's speed is
speed is definitely the big factor.
That's definitely a part of it. It's more so the people that don't take into account that these things are basically death machines. Anything above like 20 miles an hour. So it's like anybody who's
human survivability drops rapidly above 30 miles an hour.
Once you go above 30 miles an hour, they're death machines for anyone.
In 2015, NHTSA changed the regulation that required the minimum hood height to be raised because people were not being swept over the hood of cars. They were just getting swept under. It wasn't doing what it was supposed to because it was clipping their legs too low. And now people slide up onto the hoods and over windshields because they've got longer hoods and taller hoods. But that still doesn't answer the problem of like giant ass trucks.
The thing about a car is it's a death machine above 20. It's a death machine at like 1 mile an hour. If someone is not aware and a car starts rolling and it rolls on that person and that car doesn't get stopped, that car can kill someone going 1 mile per hour because of the weight. So this is what I mean. It's like, it's not even really the speed. There's a level of awareness. There's a level of the weight specifically, because in that, if a motorcycle falls over on somebody, it's not really necessarily going to kill them. It may break a bone. If the vehicle was just recently used, it may burn them, but it's probably not going to kill them. A car rolling on someone at 1-2 miles an hour, that can actually kill them.
Oh, so even 0 miles an hour.
Even at 0. So this is where it's like, this is like the difference between 2,000 pounds going 50 miles an hour and 400 pounds going 50 miles an hour is dramatic.
Man, like 2,000 pounds is basically a side-by-side. Like most cars aren't even that light anymore.
Right, but
that's a really light vehicle.
Conservative.
I know, but as an example, like that's really on the light end. Like and since most cars on the road these days are actually SUVs and trucks, like that's a lot. That's more. That's like 4,000 to 7,000 pounds that we're talking about regularly in front. Like Suburbans are gigantic.
Yeah,
freaking Expeditions are gigantic. Excursions are gigantic. These things are monster vehicles.
Which again, those people have no business operating them at 20 miles an hour, let alone at 70. So that's where this is, to me, this is like a culture of people getting overpowered vehicles that they don't understand the actual power because they have the capacity to buy it. Doesn't mean they have the proficiency to operate it, and they are given the false pretense of proficiency through the capacity to purchase. Same reason all these fucking idiots who buy these Ferraris and Lamborghinis just rev them into a wall because they don't understand how fucking torque works. So that's where it's like, this is a combination of problems where, yeah, of course, speed in the hands of the wrong person kills, but speed in the hands of a
I don't think we're talking about professionals.
No different.
I don't think
that's why they have no business.
I mean, that's the thing.
Is
like,
saying.
I don't think that we can even really talk about professional drivers and people who have CDLs and people who have actually gone through the great lengths of training to operate high performance vehicles, no matter what shape they may take, how big or heavy or light or fast
that's
or whatever.
Why we can't blame the speed.
No, we can, because the people that are driving at absurd speeds. Because in the hands of
the professionals, it doesn't kill them.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the idiots on the road who are driving like morons.
Speed. That's where I'm saying, like, you can't blame speed when it's the morons.
Yeah, I can.
Those people.
If they weren't driving fast, they would have had a higher survivability rate. They would have had a greater chance of getting to their destination.
They didn't leave a fucking hurricane zone. Those people will die because they didn't cook fucking meat before ingesting it. The thing that they died doing isn't the reason, the thing to be blamed. It's them and not being smart is what's to be blamed in every situation. That's where I'm saying, like, you can't blame speed for the death of a stupid person because the stupid person did not know how to handle speed, when speed does not kill people who handle it correctly. And that's where I'm saying it's like, yeah, it's a factor, but in fact, it's the human idiocy that's always the most important factor, because that's where it's like, this is ultimately, I don't know the statistic, but it's like all of the most of the accidents that happen are because of human error. It's not because of the speed, it's because of human error.
Oh no,
So
it's
it's
definitely
like,
speed is always a factor. Like as soon as you exceed
of course,
50 miles
because
an
they're
hour
moving.
on
This
any
is
road,
like
doesn't matter what you're in.
statistically, human error is the most, like, human error.
I mean, release their data. Like,
It's like
the faster you go, the higher your chances are of not surviving.
93% of the car accidents are caused by human error. 94 to 96, not speed.
Yeah, human error. That means it's not mechanical error. Human error means making an error in judgment, like going too fast. Going too fast is definitely a judgment error. That's totally a judgment error. If an idiot's behind the wheel and they decide to go too fast, that's totally a judgment error.
That is a type of judgment error, same as going too slow, which is why going too slow on the highway is punishable by a fine.
Yeah, if you're going slower than 45.
Yeah, that's why it's like it's contextual. Like, speed is not always the person going fastest is the one who's in the wrong. And that's where I'm saying, like, just blaming fast speed is not actually reflective of the actual statistics concerning accidents. The accidents are because of inattentiveness.
Yeah. And on roads where the speed limit is 30 miles an hour, speed is absolutely a governing factor.
Yeah, it's one of them. It's not the only. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's all like contextual. But we live we have a culture of NASCAR. We have a culture of going fast. People want to drive fast. They might not be prepared for it. They might not be equipped. They might not have a vehicle that's actually safe to drive at speed, but they do it anyways. That's another problem. That's a face of this problem that we have. Idiocy exists. Technology just makes more technologically sophisticated idiots. We can't get around that. We've tried. We've tried pushing education. We've tried being nice. We've tried, and the only thing that's left is being really firm about it.
So 17% of fatal accidents occur due to driving at speeds that are excessive for specific conditions or driving above the speed limit. That means 83% of fatal accidents are not related to speed. This is where I'm saying it's like, of course, speed is a factor. It's not the only factor, is what I'm trying to say, in the sense of, like, it's not the most important or the only, because 93% are due to human error. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, yes, human error to drive too fast in a zone where they should be driving slower for whatever reason, that is part of an error of judgment, but it's still an error of judgment.
Yeah, but an error at 30 miles an hour isn't as costly as an error at 80 miles an hour.
But it's still a human error.
Yeah, but the physical damage that occurs from traveling at that increased rate of speed, like the speed differential alone. But that's still based on human error.
Sure. That's still a human. That's a judgment error. Physics has to come into
it at a certain point.
That's a judgment error. And if the speed wasn't reached, but it's not physics' fault that the human made the problem.
No, physics just describes the outcome.
Exactly. So you can't. That's why you can't blame speed, because the human is the one that made the judgment error to go too fast.
Yeah. Well, they decided to go too fast.
Error.
They'd go too fast was still the problem.
That's why
they shouldn't have been going that fast.
That's why it's classified as a judgment error.
Sure.
If it was a mechanical error, here's the difference. So
I'm not saying that the speed itself caused the vehicle to fail.
But there are problems in that Toyota had a recall where their vehicles would accelerate without the person's, like, foot on the gas, and it would go up to like 90 miles an hour and they couldn't brake it. That is a mechanical speed error that was causing fatalities. So this is a difference between a mechanical speed error and a human judgment error. You can't conflate the two, because they're two completely different types of accidents.
I'm not conflating either of them.
No. I'm not saying.
What I'm getting at, though, is I don't think
for the sake.
I mean, I see what you're getting at, but at the end of it all, the speed is a huge factor in survivability, no matter what. Like,
of course,
almost everybody gets to walk away from a 30-mile-an-hour collision.
Of course,
but once you get over 50,
Do you remember when the journalist's car accelerated and hit the tree and the journalist was killed? That's not the same as Paul Walker and the dude joyriding and hitting the fucking post, because one is the car accelerating on its own and the other one is the people doing some shit they had no business doing, even though they were professionals, and the car is still going out of control. So one is clearly a human judgment error.
Why was the car even capable of going fast like that in the first place?
That's because they were professionals.
Well, no. Why are cars even capable of going beyond whatever a reasonable speed is for, like?
Because in the hands of a professional, that's like they're doing something that is classified as a sport.
So we assume that anyone who can buy a car is a professional then?
That's what America does. I'm saying that's not the way it should be.
Well, I'm saying that that's the culture that exists, though.
I literally started by saying that culture is the root of this problem. Yeah. So and it's not the actual speed.
Oh, I'm saying that the culture of speed is the problem.
To buy a Lamborghini because they have the money is a fucking problem.
Yeah.
People shouldn't just be able to go buy fucking Ferraris because that puts them in a spot where, because they had the money, they don't have to demonstrate the knowledge or capacity to show that they understand the physics. That's why they drive them into the fucking wall.
That's what I said at the very beginning. The entirety of my point is that there's a culture of speed that's so prevalent that they're willing to risk the lives of everyone else.
But it's not a culture of speed.
Yeah,
it's
a culture
of people. No, it's a culture of people doing shit that they have no business doing. This is what I keep getting at. Is like, yeah, people drive fast, but it's because they do. They constantly
that's like
do
a
things
broad
they have no
context thing.
Doing.
People who are idiots shouldn't
That's
be
just one aspect.
Shouldn't be starting fires in their backyards. People who are idiots shouldn't be cooking, Teflon over open flames.
Most people shouldn't be opening their emails. Most people don't have the capacity to judge the difference between a spam email and a fucking legitimate email. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that people have no fucking business doing, but they just do it anyway. So that is the problem, not the actual speed. In that, yes, speed makes the crash worse, but someone thinking they have the capacity to drive a vehicle that has 400 horsepower, not understanding physics, but doing that because they had the money to buy that vehicle, is the root of why they go fast.
I think that those people would drive fast no matter what vehicle they had, though. They would drive like an idiot.
But if they weren't able to buy it, they wouldn't have the option.
I think they would ruin any vehicle that they had the opportunity to ruin.
You can't buy. Look, if you can only go on a vehicle that goes up to 15 miles an hour, there are only a few situations, and it includes jumping out of a plane, where you can make that vehicle go more than 15 miles an hour. Like going down the steepest hill because of wind resistance, that thing is going to get maybe like 30 miles an hour at the most.
So I've
maybe 50.
I've read in one of those Yamaha Jazz or whatever they are scooters that only go 30 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour, and a buddy of mine decided that it was going to be a good idea to drill holes in the exhaust because he read that would help him go a little bit faster. It went 37 miles an hour. And he ended up getting a ticket because it was too loud.
Man.
Definitely not worth it. I think an exhaust or a muffler for a scooter is still more than the price of a ticket. So a ticket plus the extra gas and time it would take to go anywhere.
Well, and it's like, again, that culture, those people, this is why those people are ridiculous human beings. We all know that because of the powertrain, electric vehicles not having to shift gears are inherently going to be faster, basically at every turn, than gas-powered vehicles. Of course, you can get a few gas-powered vehicles that can hang, but you're
talking about NHRA drag racers at that point, because they're electric drag racers that are almost as fast. And the only reason they're not as fast is because they haven't figured out how to make an electric motor that's light enough and batteries that are light enough to stick into an actual, like, top fuel class racer. But as far as open class, there are some drag racers that use forklift motors, and they have 16 car batteries, and it's only good for like one run, and then they've got to pull all the batteries out and put another bank of batteries in to do the next run. But they're insanely fast.
Right. I mean, so
Obscenely fast,
all
so
that
fast that
aside,
it's dumb, and they don't even make any noise. It's just like an electric grill.
This is what I'm getting at. The fact that they don't make any noise is why Americans do not like them. So because there's no sonic feedback in the engine, and if it does get feedback, it sounds like a TIE fighter or some weird.
That's the real
shit.
problem, is that kids can still hear it, but adults have burned their ears out by the time they've gone through puberty and listened to rock and roll. And
it does make sounds, but because they don't have the fucking stupid shit that the Americans have like identified as being synonymous with a car that is powerful, but really it's usually just like the muffler's bad. Like that type of sonic association is one of the main reasons that electric vehicles haven't caught on, which is preventing them from going faster, ironically. So this is why this is, to me, idiocy and not speed, because if they actually wanted to go faster, they'd be doing electric vehicles more, but they're not, because they're actually just obsessed with making this car an extension of their penis, and it's more about that.
Oh man, it's really weird, because some cars are tuned for like an 1/8 mile run, and some cars are tuned for a 1/4 mile run. When your car is tuned for just 1,000 yards, so you basically run out of gears by the end of the strip. You don't need to go any faster than that. And some of these cars aren't even like
but they're still
super
getting
fast.
beat by electric cars.
No, that's what I mean. Some of these cars are only designed to run like an 1/8 of a mile in 7 seconds, or a 1/4 mile in 8 seconds, but they run out of gears, and they're also impossibly uncomfortable to be in. Like, I'm talking about like pure race cars. You can't drive them on the streets. You can drive a fucking Tesla on the street. You can drive a K5 on the street. You could drive any electric vehicle on the street, but you can't take a fucking race car on the street. And then like the proto race cars and hypercars and supercars and damn near race cars, but are still somehow street legal cars. Most of those aren't even comfortable to be in. Like, the last time I got into a Corvette was at a car show. It was years ago. And I just remember thinking, man, this isn't very much bigger than my dad's Miata. And Mustangs are a bit more comfortable because they have a little bit more like shoulder room because they have back seats. But, they're still tiny.
Yeah.
And it's not like passenger cars, like sedans and even larger coupes. They tend to favor, comfort, like headroom and shoulder room and leg room, in ways that sports cars just can't do. You just can't build a sports car like that. And they just get gigantic and they stop being agile. And there's nothing wrong with that. Big touring cars are really comfortable to be traveling around in. But where's anyone going to go right now? We've still got Plague World.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's just like the idea that somebody who's not on a racing team can just go buy one of these just because they have the money. It's fucking stupid. And that's like, yeah, those cars are pretty much useless on non-race tracks. So,
like all the track models and all the GT3 track model editions or whatever. Yeah, that stuff is absurd.
Those are meant for race. Those are meant for racing. They're meant for being on tracks that allow them to push the limits of their engineering and nothing more, because anything under the limits of their engineering is basically going to burn out the fucking mechanics on that vehicle by not pushing them. And it's like a lot of them are just not meant to be operated at low speeds in a way that then ends up, again, if you're a team that goes out to the salt flats to fucking race for world record numbers, or if you're on a racing team, that's the people who should. The issue is the technology that goes into building these things then gets put into other vehicles.
So speaking of salt flats, this is super random. You remember the chick who hired the guys to break hit Nancy Kerrigan's knee during the Winter Olympics? I can't remember her name. She holds like a world record. Tanya Harding. She holds a world record on the salt flats for like a classic car, I think. Or it's so messed up. Like she's in the fucking world record books for driving a car, and not even really fast, just like an old car, but fast enough. That's what I mean. Like people do dumb shit. There's a culture of speed. People just want to go fast. They'll do it in anything. It doesn't even have to be that fast.
Yeah, but that's dumb.
Yeah, I know.
That's idiots. That's stupid.
Yeah, it is.
That's not the speed. That's stupidity. Like somebody who like wants to go fast, but in something that's not really that fast, that's fucking stupid.
Yeah, that's a dangerous fucking vehicle.
That's dumb.
Yeah.
That's where I'm like, hey, I'm going faster on a plane flying to a new location. Somebody who goes to the salt flats to drive an old vehicle 110 miles an hour is fucking stupid. That's fucking dumb. I go faster on a plane. So that's what I'm saying. Like I enjoy takeoff in a plane because I enjoy going fast. The G-forces that I get from sitting in a plane and landing, those are fucking awesome. Like I don't actually care for roller coasters because they're way more dangerous than planes. So I'd rather go on a plane ride because I enjoy speed. I enjoy going like 300 miles an hour. I've been on a G5 going 500 miles an hour. That shit's fucking awesome. I'm not going to go to the salt flats to drive a car 110 miles an hour because I actually enjoy speed. That to me is dumb. Like, so that's why I'm saying speed. I've gone way faster than almost every hypercar by flying in a plane. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like, that's where this is to me, people who actually want to enjoy speed. It's like, okay, you can push upper limits. The most speed somebody's going to be able to get in this lifetime is either going on a rocket or getting in one of those centripetal force machines that like allows them to get up to the extremes of what the human body can experience. Like that's it. Like anybody who's getting in a car.
It's a human-sized centrifuge.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of the name of that thing.
Anybody who's like not doing that, that's not for speed. That's for some weird like dick shit. It's like that's what I'm saying. As somebody who actually enjoys speed, I don't like the weird dick culture that's like being associated with speed, being like conflated with speed, because it's like, no, I actually enjoy speed. But I think that culture's stupid.
Yeah, but, you know, those people also ruined like a okay hand gesture to let people know things are okay.
Yeah, they ruin everything.
They ruin
everything. Everything they get their hands on, they fucking ruin. Which is why, again, the idea that everything should be able to be consumed because somebody can go buy it. It's like, well, that shit's ruined. There's a whole fucking Community episode about goddamn Pierce Hawthorne ruining a fucking handshake by buying it. I thought we learned this lesson. Money ruins shit. Like, yeah, money ruins cars. Money ruins fucking speed. Money ruins fucking competition. Money ruins everything. So it's not the speed. It's the fucking, like,
Speaking of money ruining competition,
part of it.
These guys in a Cleveland pike fish or walleye fishing competition, like big purse. We're talking.
Oh my god!
Did you read about that? They put 8 pounds of fucking lead weights in the bellies of their fish they brought in, and you know they're standing in a crowd of dudes who know exactly how much a fish weighs by looking at it because they've been catching those fish all day too, and they're looking at those fish. They're like thinking like, ain't no fucking way that thing weighs that much. No damn way. And then it gets to the point where the judges are like holding it and he's like, hey, something's wrong. They put it down on the ground and slice it open. The guy pulls it out and he freaks out. First off, these guys have also been there's suspicion they've cheated in other
A
competitions.
ton of cheating
Like
competition.
they have netted something like $300,000 this year alone, and they're believed to have cheated in every single fucking one, gotten away with it almost the entire time until now. So at a fishing competition too, like what the
I mean, this is the problem. It's incentivized everywhere.
2 pounds of
Don't
lead
matter.
in fish.
It don't matter if it's fishing. It don't matter if it's fucking esports. It don't matter if it's mixed martial arts, because everybody's just concerned with the winning and the money. This is what people put fucking lead balls and fillets in their fish when they catch them so they can win. That's some low, dirty shit. That it's like, just go do a real job instead of like ruining this sport. But no, the money,
Man.
the allure of the money, they just ruined the fucking sport.
Yeah.
Now everything's gonna come under scrutiny because these guys wanted some fucking money that bad. They Lance Armstrong this shit. Now everybody's fucked because everything's under.
You know, the shit part of it is that, like, I don't care about the fish. I don't care what they're. What I'm interested in is, like, where were they and what were they doing when they caught the fish? Because I'm interested in the fish too, but not cheating to get the fish.
I guess some people are like putting fish in cages the night before so that when they go back,
It's like
so it's already in the spot. Yeah, so
that's fucking low down and dirty too.
bro, it's like real bad. It's real bad. Because it just happened in the chess arena. Apparently, some dude was using a fucking electronic butt plug, literally using a goddamn electronic butt plug to fucking cheat at chess. And it sounds fucking made up, where you're like, they didn't go into the details. And it's like, you don't need to know the details, but it's like the links that people go through to like make money and in the process just completely ruin the integrity of the thing that they exploited. Is like
it was like Morse code, right? They had to have been using Morse code.
I'm sure, but the only thing that it only serves to make their avenue of exploitation ruined from that point on. So they don't care about, like, if this dude pretended he cared about chess, no, he didn't. This dude pretended he cared about fishing, no, he didn't. So all the people that actually care then suffer because these people are willing to come in and exploit their fucking passion. So that is why it's like shit like this to me. I don't let it ruin my passion, but if you look at like video games and like esports and how this type of thing came in, this is why we can't get good video games anymore. It's because companies are just putting out things trying to appease this type of culture rather than trying to put out good games.
You know, butt plug chess would be interesting to watch if they had to play chess with the thing running at full tilt. And then it'd be more like, how long can they even play before they like knock the pieces over or fall out of their chair?
I bet that's probably on Pornhub somewhere.
Oh, if it's not, if it wasn't, it is now. It's like somebody's making it this instant right now.
You can call the porn thing or the porn industry a lot of things, but it's not uncreative. It will spoof some shit really quickly and do it well. So I'm sure there's some spoofs of that already that are probably really good.
I mean, the porn industry probably generated like 2, 3, 4 dozen variations on Lord of the Rings. So I have no doubt that they are, there's like a special department in the porn industry that's like specializes in making fun of athletics or any kind of competitive anything.
The porn industry has perpetually been the leader in tech concerning the cutting edge.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, it's funny to see like Elon try to do a robot when there's like sex dolls that are fucking more advanced than that shit. Like, but they're not trying to say, "Oh, we're gonna do it for $20,000" either. So it's like that. The funny thing to see Elon chasing stuff that like the porn industry has done, but people, even down to like cryptocurrency, the porn industry was into crypto years ago. There was like Titcoin and like porno coin, shit like that, like a long time ago. Well, because the porn industry was Operation Chokehold. Operation Chokehold. A lot of people that worked in the porn industry had their bank accounts like closed and seized. So they ended up switching to cryptocurrency in like 2013, 2014. So you have a lot of people that are like in cryptocurrency because they were like sex workers that had their like bank accounts seized because like this is people who are doing this shit willingly. I'm not talking about anybody who's doing sex work unwillingly. I'm talking about like people who were like OnlyFans wasn't a thing then, but if somebody's like got an OnlyFans page, if they had a bank account, that shit got closed down and then they lost all their fucking money. So then a lot of those people got into crypto because of the United States government being perpetually stuck in 1950s. So I am always like looking at the porn industry for where their technological trajectory is at.
There's a good joke here. The porn industry is unique in that it falls under the crosshairs of both Republicans and Democrats, because while Democrats are concerned with what's going on in the boardroom, Republicans are always concerned with what's going on in the bedroom. And uniquely, pornography encompasses both rooms. So it's always going to be under the spotlight. They're always going to be watching the porn.
Yeah. Yeah, and using it as a pariah from which to shout their fucking political beliefs. So, yeah, I think it's really funny in that like there was a period where between Paris Hilton and like the Kardashians, it was like, are sex workers going to get less stigmatized by society, as if like the people who do it willingly aren't like horrible people because of their profession? Nope. Verted right back to hating on sex workers. So yeah, it's like you said, that's uniquely one of the things that brings both sides together, is disapproving of sex workers.
Well, if they could just get a normal job. That's one of those things that I don't think our society will ever come to terms with.
Well, yeah, it does seem to be a huge struggle for this particular society. But we've come a long way very quickly in that, like, if you go look at like 90s comedy, it was very homophobic, just blatantly homophobic, like consistently. If you're gonna get anything,
even early 2000s comedy.
Jokes. Yeah, even early 2000s was okay. Early 2000s was really anti-trans. Like I think they started moving away from the homophobia, but it's like, oh, they're gonna make a trans joke. They're gonna make a joke at some trans person's expense in the early 2000s, definitely. Oh, you're You're like in a dress. Oh, we're gonna make a joke. So it's like, which the thing about anti-trans jokes is it's more misogyny because they're never really aimed at trans men. It's always aimed at trans women. So it's actually like the trans jokes are deeply rooted in misogyny. And it's just like this weird circle of fucking women hate where you're like, gay people get a lot of hate too, obviously. That's not, I'm not
Whoa,
trying
wait.
to.
So cis hetero men who are extra manly hating on women who want to be manly because they're not manly enough?
Dude, there's a lot of
That's
things
like,
to unpack about male toxic male mindset in America. Because on the one hand, especially like the refusal to accept trans women as women and then labeling as gay is like this circular logic where you're like, well, if they're a woman, then it's not gay. So just
that's interesting. A significant portion of the pornography is generated by trans women.
yeah, dude, somebody's out there watching that shit. They've been watching that shit.
Like a significant portion of the. I was just reading about this on a Twitter thread. They were talking about how a significant portion of the porn industry is trans women, and there are not a lot of. There are, I guess, women who are just physically female, but a lot of the times those women don't take a lot of the mainstream jobs, like the core of the industry itself, which is why there's a lot of videos out there where you see people who have, slightly more masculine facial features, but it's because they underwent transition therapy early, like very early. And so they didn't need to undergo a lot of surgeries. There's like a significant portion of pornography is made by men, or not men, by trans women who at one point may have been male. And we know who's the consumers of pornography in this country are. And so it's really strange.
Trans people, I think, were called hermaphrodites for a while. Like, I mean, obviously incorrectly, but I think there was a period in American society where they were more accepted with the understanding that like the people who were born with both sex organs, like them making a choice to identify as one or the other is not, it's not a fucking big deal. Like, yeah. If you want to like identify as one because you're born with both sex organs, good for you. That's like not to say that person was going to be confused, but it's like good for them for saying like I have a penis and a vagina or whatever form it took. I'm going to identify as one or the other.
Good for them that they have a strong enough personal identity that they can establish that kind of bodily autonomy.
Exactly. Good for them. Exactly. That's just good for them.
Big ups.
So that's where I'm like, I think we were at a period where when it was more obvious in a situation like that, then it's like, oh, well, of course that person, if they want to get surgery to remove one, good for them. And society was like very, not like okay with hermaphrodites, but it was way less judgmental. And I think it was partially because the people who were like coming out as hermaphrodites or people who had chosen their gender identity were like not doing so in a way that presented their identities as them being like, now I'm going on the market and I'm sexually available. Because then I think it like, with the advent of Jerry Springer, I think that's when people like, fuck Jerry Springer for him creating a lot of the trans hate. Because what ended up happening from my perspective is like, when Jerry Springer would bring these people on and then have them publicly, I feel like a lot of this shit was not made up. I think a lot of those people who were like uh,
I think some of it was real,
coming.
but some of it was definitely fake.
Some of it was definitely, but I'm talking specifically about the situations in which somebody would be trans and then come out to their partner on the show, and that person seemingly not know that the other person was trans or not have known before being put in front of a national audience to then have that be dropped on them to get their most visceral and most homophobic and most transphobic response in the moment in a way that was like very exploitative, but at the same time then created this fear in like cis people that trans people are out there like passing to prey upon cis people as if that was like their goal, when it was really just to be accepted and to exist. And then when you see the violent responses from people or against people who were coming out, of course trans people are going to like stay in the closet, because there's often a violent response that was then like not only okayed by people, but we're going to put that shit on display. We're going to broadcast it. We're going to basically put that trans person in a place. We're going to let them get jumped and have this, we're going to, you know, the security person is going to step in and pull them out. But because we're going to basically be like, oh, this is two dudes fighting because we're not accepting this person as trans, that's going to perpetuate that culture within the audience. And then a whole generation of people who are willing to accept trans violence against trans people, because we put that shit on a fucking public display, not only accepted it, Jerry, we fucking cheered that shit, man. Not us.
They cheered
Not
Steve
us.
too.
The people in this, yeah, of course. But this is where I'm saying, like,
They loved it when that guy would get up out of his
kids,
chair.
When we're children growing up with that being like pushed upon us, there was a period before where trans people were not as publicly, violently, and aggressively oppressed while being cheered against them. And it was like they were allowed to live their lives, but like needed to tell their story so people understood like why somebody might have had a dick before, but they got surgery and the dick's no longer there. It's like, if it's really, I think, easy for like people like you and I to discuss those things, but for super repressed people who don't talk about politics, who don't talk about sex, the idea that like then you're going to be in a situation where you might be dating somebody and then you have to be like, hey, by the way, I no longer have a penis. I used to have a penis, so I am a woman, but at one point I had a penis. For whatever reason, that conversation is not easy to have in this specific country. Like, I'm sure it's not necessarily easy, like, anytime, but I'm sure there's places where it's easier than others. So it's like the idea that somebody, because again, I think it's easier for people to
I mean, I know two people who have completely transitioned. And,
I know plenty of people.
And I mean, like personally that I like spent time around, and like if I didn't know, I wouldn't have been able to tell.
That's not. It's passing's not important.
That was like no. I mean,
it
was just like it was so incredible to me. Like that's how far it's come. It's not just like some person like growing their hair out and taking some hormones. It's like there's a whole complex process that some people go through.
Right. Yeah. But again, the idea that somebody even needs to pass, like as soon as somebody's like, my identity is whatever, their identity.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like they don't need to be able to.
But that was
a certain way.
But that was also part of their identity, and it was incredible.
Right.
Like
but that's
wouldn't have even known. It wouldn't have even come up. Actually, that's.
But we've stopped discussing hermaphrodites, and that some people are literally born with a penis and a vagina, or some combination of like, oh, they might have a clitoral head, but they also have like a small scrotum that doesn't have testicles. There's like all these different variations of combinations of genitals that, like, if it's the person clearly has more than one, then it's obvious why that person got surgery to like only identify as one, whereas like that conversation is different than someone who's like, I feel like these things are wrong and that's why I got the surgery. And America is much more inclined to judge the person who felt wrong well, based on what I've seen, if a person was literally born with more than one set of genitals, America's like, oh yeah, fucking go get your surgery. Good for you. As far as I can tell, not to say that they were okay with it, it seemed to be that they understood it more, as long as to them, those people weren't then going out and becoming part of the dating pool. And that's where America drew their line. It's like, oh, you can be trans as long as you don't try to date me, as if these fucking people were catches themselves.
I mean,
so it's like,
that could maybe make sense if we were like ants and our entirety of our existence was governed by chemical messaging sent from the master controller, and that would only account for people having like fouled hardware and bad programming or bad logic center, and that would be a mechanical failure. But that's not what humans are. We're not machines that run off of chemical messaging, and while we are influenced by hormones and there is a strong chemical and electrical component to our existence, like it can't be boiled down to to one component. We are like uniquely the sum of many things happening all at once. I think the part that really gets me is that there are a lot of people who feel that they need to tell other people how to measure themselves. Like, oh, use this measuring device for yourself. And we're so close, like as an entire species, to to be able to reflect on like individuality as something that's not just like a reason to, I'm going to do this because I'm an individual, but more as like we are all unique people and we all have our own existence and our own, our own way to participate in this grand continuum that we call life. But for some reason, there are some assholes who continually say, that's not right, or that's just wrong.
Which they have no business doing. And that's like,
I think you said something earlier about laws that are generally designed to protect people. Like if someone's not harming somebody or interfering in their personal space or their well-being, like what's the real problem? And so like somehow someone wants to equate somebody's personal life with harming the state. That's what it really boils down to, it seems. And they want to legislate behavior as if someone's behavior harms the state.
Well, what you're talking about is like what Israel uses to defend itself from criticism by saying like any criticism of Israel is criticizing the people by proxy being anti-Semitic. And it's like that framing is,
wait, that's circular logic frequently. Though.
It is, which is why it's obviously ridiculous. But that's like you'll frequently see people trying to use that framing to prevent any sort of criticism of Israel, as if like criticizing the state is the same as criticizing the people. And it's like I've lost friends over that shit where I'm like, dude, you can't do that, because then once you start doing that, that logic starts preventing any state from any sort of criticism, as if like criticizing the American government is criticizing every American person.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I love China, but also Xi Jinping is fucking crazy.
Well, we criticize China leader. All the time.
He's also not a great leader. China does dumb shit all the fucking time. They do cool shit all the time. Russia might have done some cool shit, but we wouldn't know because they do so much dumb shit that's all we hear about.
I've criticized art. I wasn't criticizing your dad. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
And I think it's very easy for people with critical thought to discern the difference between when someone's criticizing an institution versus when somebody's criticizing an individual or a people. So like, it's like, I think we've discussed like the problems with art galleries and the art world. At no time do I think you thought I was talking about your dad at all. Otherwise, like, I would have made sure to let you know that it wasn't. But even further, it's because I would never assume that you're going to take a discussion of the art industry as a personal affront to your father.
I can't even imagine one artist who could ever claim to be like the the leader of art. Like, there are a few people who were definitely forerunners within creative or collective movements, but let's see. I know that Cezanne is like considered the father of modern art and abstract art and all this other stuff, and he made some really incredible paintings, damn incredible stuff. But he wasn't like the general. General Levy declared himself the general of jungle, and he got basically blacklisted from big events in all over the United Kingdom for a decade. You can't just declare yourself the leader of anything. No one person is the voice of a movement or a culture. I think that's the real problem with politics, is that it's gone from this collective decision-making process to this deifying, let's identify the icons and exalt them on some pillar, and then they can do no wrong because they're the voice of the people, and they're not. They're our fucking secretaries.
Yeah, that's a good analogy in that there's even more proof of what you just said. Like, last night, Mark Zuckerberg basically bought out the entire UFC event, and none of the people's families were allowed. The media was allowed. And then they were literally posting videos of Zuckerberg getting excited, like, Zuck is all of us when watching fights. It's like, no, motherfucker, he's none of us. He's none of us. He wants to be fucking Caesar. He wants to be the emperor, looking down upon his fucking plebes, judging, thumbs downing or thumbs upping. He's not trying to be one of us. So them trying to frame it as if he's one of us is 1,000% propaganda. But that's literally what those motherfuckers were doing yesterday, as if he's one of us. But he's supposed to be our fucking secretary, not our fucking emperor. Like, Facebook is meant to be us. The thing that was valuable, it is valuable about it, is us. But everybody has put their value into Zuck as a figurehead. And everybody who goes and logs on Facebook and fucking sees the ads every day and sees the fucking shit that contributes to the total value of Facebook is the actual value within that platform. The same with Twitter. But they make it seem like, oh, it's fucking Jack Dorsey or whoever fuck leads Twitter now, or if Elon bought it.
Jack Dorsey isn't. He's just a board member.
I know he's not there anymore. He stepped down. But I'm saying he was the figurehead, and they haven't done a good enough job of replacing him as a figurehead, which is why it's falling apart as an influence.
It's pretty funny because from what I recall, and it's very vague, there was a kind of a minor effort to make it seem like he was going to go all meditation retreat, shaved his head, disconnect from the internet, detach from society, find himself, probably eat a bunch of mushrooms in the mountains while chanting some shit about synergy. And then all of a sudden he's like speaking for Twitter again because Lord Douchebag wants to buy it.
Yeah, they did that shit with Tom from MySpace.
Yeah. Except Tom turned out to be, but he it was funny because he became a legitimate professional photographer for a while.
Right.
And
I mean, that's so they claim.
Well,
and which again, it's like in this, yeah, of course he was taking pictures, but it's like, where's Tom's photos? He didn't become Annie Leibovitz. Like,
oh yeah, well,
you know what I'm saying?
That takes
like
a
the
lifetime,
way that they were making. Oh, he's about, yeah, exactly. Which is why his transition into photography was clearly some sort of PR stunt to try to bring him back into the mainstream that failed. But it's like when they try to rehabilitate someone's image, that's the type of shit that they do. And it's
I
like
just
a
remember
total PR team.
I remember that happening after like his rise through a bunch of photography groups on Google Plus, which was surprisingly the only thing Google Plus was good for was bringing photographers together. But then it wasn't good enough to defeat, like, what is it, 500px or even Picasa. So I guess Picasa is the image sharing platform for Google.
Well, and that's another problem is like with the advent of iPhones, it became more and more difficult for legitimate photographers to become famous or influential.
Man,
so that's even more reason where it's like
I get brand new desktop images beamed to me every day from Bing desktops, and I love it because I get to see incredible photography from locations that I can't even imagine where they are, because the images are captured with such fantastic lenses that I'm not quite sure how far away I am from that. But I know that the resolving power of that camera system is just top notch. And that photographer waited like the entire fucking day, maybe even 2 or 3 days, for the clouds to be right and the sunlight to be just right. And that's the thing that you don't see with phone photography. The phone is great because it's like the best freaking snapshot device ever made, because it's always on you and they look good. They take good pictures because computational photography is fucking fantastic. But rarely will you see somebody post up for a day or 2 or 3 days to take one picture with a phone. That's definitely still the territory of the really dedicated photographer who is going to spend the extra effort to carry all of that equipment to that location.
And I think that's the difference between composition and reliance upon tools, in that somebody who understands composition can take a good picture with the phone.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas somebody who doesn't understand composition couldn't necessarily take a good picture
with a big camera system.
Yeah, with the most expansive camera system. And they end up, framing things wrong or not getting the mise en scène correct or whatever.
One of my favorite cameras was this Olympus, like, ruggedized camera. You could drop it from 6 feet and put it underwater down to like 3 meters for 30 minutes. You could just use it underwater. What else could it do? It could do all sorts of cool stuff. It was shock rated, like resistant to electromagnetic fields, everything. It was fantastic. I dropped that thing so many times and never worried about it. I couldn't imagine any phone that I've ever had surviving the amount of abuse that camera withstood. Actually, no, I can, but it would weigh at least like a half a pound, maybe 2 pounds. So somewhere in that range. It would have to be made of steel. That thing had a steel chassis. But that camera the images that came out of it were just whatever I took a picture of. Had nowhere near the editing capability of a computer phone that can see and listen things and make its own noises. Like, I would never trade modern camera phones for any of the point and shoot stuff that I've had over the years. And the only thing that I wish that my big camera could do was travel more easily. And it's just because there's a lot of stuff involved. Yeah,
it's like, if you could get that functionality portable, it would be awesome. But that's why you have to carry all that shit, is
because that's what it takes to do those things.
Exactly. Which is where, even the fucking lighting, it's like, just knowing that you need to set up lighting even on outside shots in a lot of cases, not obviously really long shots.
Just one lamp doubles the size of the entire kit practically in terms of how much stuff I end up having to lug around. And it's not. I'm not complaining about it because it's actually kind of fun setting that stuff up and doing the thing. It's even better when there's like a really good window of opportunity. But more, better, faster, smaller. I think that's why we've seen so much more street photography and or like urban landscape type stuff. That's the kind of stuff that I see more and more on when I just look for images. I think that
Well,
in the
sorry,
hands of the people, the camera phone, computer phone, it's like the best thing that actually ever happened to photography. Because I think that the same, the cream rises to the top is the saying, and I think it still holds true, is that people who are really, really talented photographers with a point and shoot camera phone are going to be brilliant when they're given real tools with discrete control.
for sure. Yeah, and I think that's true in a purely academic setting, but when people don't know the difference, shit can curdle.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're at a point where stuff started to curdle because people don't know when shit's sour and they don't know if what they're looking at is cream or fucking the shit that's been sitting there too long. And it's just like, oh, I'm used to this, so it's okay. And they've been habituated into accepting the aesthetic or accepting it because it's familiar instead of good. Like, I don't actually have TikTok, but ever since the black dance, like the black dancer boycott, I don't or strike. I don't know if it's ever resumed, but I've not seen any good dancing lately, like on Twitter. Some of it on Instagram's okay.
I'm
But
pretty
I
sure
have
that market was like, screw y'all. And
oh totally,
we're
totally,
taking our toys and going home.
totally.
And I don't
Because
think they've
of
come back.
Addison Rae.
Yeah.
Once Addison Rae got that fucking Jimmy Fallon shit, I haven't seen Black Twitter or Black TikTok like really dance, like put dances out there since. And that shit, anything that people try to make work, it don't work. It's like that whole genre of people like creating dances and then people doing their own version of that dance. Nobody's doing it because nobody's putting out good dances. So that's also where I'm like, I do see the capacity for the cream to control its rising when it's not rising to the top and people are being arbitrarily chosen, when the actual cream is being like watered down and siphoned off and the cream chooses, hey, oh, I'm not gonna let you fucking water down my shit anymore. That's when I do see we're in this place where it's like the inability for people to tell the difference is going to exhaust itself as long as the best abstain, and then it starts to realize like the things that try to exist without the actual cream end up becoming watered down too much and not being able to persist in that form. Like there's nobody like Addison Rae that can come out and steal Black TikTok dances because Black TikTok ain't doing those dances, so they can't make another Addison Rae. And it's starting to happen in the form of like with photography. I think enough people have probably been screwed over by people claiming to be photographers at weddings and then not being real photographers to understand that like real photography takes talent. I'm not sure if Americans are specifically, I think other places are better versed, but I don't know if Americans are yet well versed to know the difference between good photography and just like a nice camera. Because that's, you know, a nice camera taking a shot of something is going to look like good photography to an untrained eye. So that's where I'm like, I'm not sure if Americans can generally look at photography
Well, I
yet.
think that the culture of being photographed itself has been in decline for a long time. And so when in the past people knew, hey, the photographer's getting ready to take a picture, everybody get into place. And, you know, we've talked about this. Everyone knows where they're going to stand. That doesn't happen anymore. And it's like a last minute thing. And it's all in the hands of the photographer. And so I think a lot of times what I see is a very, very well-intentioned attempt to capture the moment, because capturing the moment is often, you know, what people are happy to say. Oh, they captured the moment so well, all that kind of thing, because everyone's happy and lively. But that's practically street photography, where people are wearing wedding dresses and at a party. I think that like the expectations for a lot of things have changed, especially because
I think that's also, there's multiple things that factor into that, in that when people originally were getting photographs taken, they did not have frequent access.
Oh, yeah.
So they would have to put on their best face. So candid photography wasn't as viable, because you're like, hey, if I'm going to get this one picture taken, I'm going to make sure I'm smiling, or in the cases where, you know, a lot of them aren't smiling, I'm at least going to look solemn and respectable or honorable. So they're not trying to be caught in a candid moment. Whereas as film became more accessible, then the candid shot became more desirable to get people out of that rigid fake pose for the camera, because everyone knew they were posing. So then it was like, get the candid shot, and that's the goal. And now it's like, as you're saying, there's no more. We've moved so far away from structure that getting the structured shot is like,
just not
what
baked
appears
in.
to be structured but organic is like the goal now. It's like, you don't want to set it up because nobody wants to have an inorganic shot, but you want to have it the perfect structure and perfect balance and perfect composition. But that's hard to do without actually setting it up. So in some cases, people will set it up and make it seem like it's organic, or in the other cases, as you're saying, they'll wait for fucking 3 days until they get the proper natural organic composition.
Yeah, it's rough. Like the idea of herding cats is often tossed around in photography forums, dealing with groups of people, and for a good reason. Sometimes it's really hard to get, you know, 3 human adults to do the same thing. Throw kids into the mix? Holy shit. A baby? Forget about it. Surprisingly, dogs are photogenic in ways that are always just delightful. Not all of them. Some dogs are just can't even be around them. But the dogs that like being in front of cameras are delightful.
Yeah. Yeah, some animals are more aware than others concerning like their own capacity to influence by appearing to be cute or aesthetically pleasing, which is where you can see, you know, a lot of the smaller animals will use that shit to manipulate, and they know they're cute. So they don't like, they're not as like loving as the dogs who aren't like fluffy, but then have to then use their character to get attention by proxy, then making them like play up more to the camera, quote unquote.
Well, Well, I'm pretty sure that dogs' faces have evolved in such a way that we approve of them more. Like when we look at them from up on high, they have a more submissive face. They don't have they've lost their aggressive snout. Their teeth aren't as visible. They kind of look like pathetic sometimes, even though they're not. They're just looking at you.
Oh, totally.
Like that's totally been bred. That was selectively bred so that humans would be like, "Oh yeah, this is my dog."
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I don't know if it makes them smarter or dumber for the ones that play into it.
the ones that figure out that they can use it, they're definitely smarter for it.
Yeah.
And the ones that are just dopey, well, they get the benefit of the doubt anyways. So it's a win-win. And they can choose to be dumb dogs if they want to be. They're like, "Oh, I'm just a dog, bro. I can barely understand the words you're saying." And then I look back at them. It's like, "No, I know exactly. I know you know exactly what I just said." You know the best.
Well,
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I was gonna say I think that ends up being a lot of why people end up getting animals that this gets back to that thing. Most people shouldn't actually have animals. They're not in positions where the animal gets enough attention, and by proxy, then it doesn't get cultured enough to become smart. So it's like, if you're not gonna be around an animal like most of the day, and it's gonna be like locked up in a cage or like alone, the person probably shouldn't have that animal.
Yeah.
In like 9 out of 10 cases. So this is people doing things like the idea that there are pet shops and pet stores. I mean, they're starting to go away more, but the little puppy mills and shit like that is like the idea that this living thing is just this pet to be attended to when you feel like it and when you feel like rubbing it and when you feel like petting its head. That's what this thing is for. Really, this living thing, that's a framing that is super problematic for a lot of reasons. But in general, it like, especially when kids get pets, it starts this cascade of like decisions of people doing things that they have no fucking business doing. Like kids definitely, as someone who had a pet that I actually had to take care of, when my dad was like, you're going to have to feed it. You're going to have to take it out. You're going to have to clean up after it. He did not capitulate on any of those things. So then I realized like a month in, this shit ain't fun when you actually take care of it. Like when you actually do the responsibility associated with having an animal, there's a lot of fucking work. There's a lot of shit cleaning up. There's a lot of piss to be cleaned up unless you just wallow in squalor. So to actually have an animal and not end up in squalor is a lot more responsibility than most people actually have, in a way that they shouldn't actually be having these pets either, let alone the responsibility to clean up after them and keep them fed well and to the doctor's visits, then give them the proper attention.
No, it's true.
It's a lot.
I've got 3 cats, and I'm like absolutely at the threshold of what I can manage. 3 cats and a dog. That's the absolute threshold of my ability to manage, like coexisting with animals like that. And I love them all. They're great. The cats are fantastic. They're all lovable. The dog is fantastic too. He's the coolest dog. He's the best dog. Best dressed. Super handsome. But, it's that's 4 living, breathing, I hope they're thinking creatures that share their lives with me. And it's
even
complex.
If they're not thinking, they still are living.
Yeah, they're still they're still alive. They still live here. And they still choose to be around me and not be dicks.
Well, you took responsibility for those living things.
Yeah.
So it's different than if those things came to you and asked you to be their guardian. It's like in a sense, it's never really voluntary for pets. So it's always like an involuntary relationship. So in that case, it has to be the person who's responsible for that living thing takes care of that living thing to the best of its capacity. And when people are like taking on these responsibilities and treating it as if like, oh, I'm sick of this dog, I can just go take it to the shelter. They do not accept the responsibility associated with actually becoming the guardian of a living thing, because then they can just drop it off in their minds. And it was never a permanent responsibility in the way it should have been.
Man, some of those people have kids.
Exactly. It's the same way they look at their kids. It's the exact same way they see their kids, which is, again, it started with them getting a fucking pet as a kid and their parent allowing them to treat that pet as an object and not a living thing. Then they turn around and treat their fucking children as an object, not a living thing. Their kid turns, it's like a weird dehumanizing cycle that also starts with like weirdly putting dogs above black people by society. It's like Americans will treat dogs better than black people, but they treat their dogs like shit. So it's not even really like, if Americans treated their dogs the way that they do in the movies, it wouldn't even be as bad, but they don't treat their dogs well either. It's like these dogs are in fucking cages 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, starved for attention, fucking shitting, pissing on themselves. Then the person comes home and is like, oh, I love you, and then pets them for a little bit and then like puts it back in the cage. You know, it's like this relationship with animals is the start of the dehumanizing of people. And that's why I'm like, specifically pets, in the way that it's like, this is also where when I'm like, it's bad decision making. It's like, of course, the speed is a problem, and it's like, I don't when I'm trying to articulate like bad decision making, this is like at the core. People will be like, it's one thing to have fucking acre or 2 acres of property and have like a place where your dog can fucking run. That's completely different than having a dog that's like 45 pounds living in a 1-bedroom apartment. That's way different. That's way different. But do you know how many people do that?
I mean,
I could point to dozens in my apartment complex.
I've got 3/4 of an acre,
dozens.
And Bruce can run around freely.
Yeah.
He can get up to full speed.
That's way different than him. If you had Bruce in a fucking apartment, that would be like animal abuse, basically.
Well, he'd have to be outside all the time, because he likes to follow. All the animals like to follow the sun around or avoid the sun, depending on the time of year. Although they also tend to follow the humans around too. Whichever, if Sheila or I are home, they're going to be around one of us. All of them. All of the cats like to congregate around one person, and the dog does too. I think that's how I know that, you know, we've got a good human-animal coexistence balance.
Yeah, I feel like when there's like a congregation and not a healing or a submission, there's more of a balance present. Because you can tell when an animal is just like submitting versus when an animal is like genuinely enjoying someone's presence.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like, great because
I've
Bruce will come and lay down, and then Rambo will come and lay down next to him, and then Peanut will be somewhere in the room. TJ's outside because he's weird like that.
Yeah. Which, again, it's like, I've never been in a position where I've been an authority over Bruce. So whenever he's like expressing joy for my presence, it's purely because he
Exceptional
enjoys
Randos
my
show
presence,
is produced
and it's
live
not
in
because
Sunroom
he's
Studios
trying
Base
to
Capsule
show
in partnership with
submission
KLST
as
103.5
part of my pack.
Radio Callisto.
And I think it's like
remember to catch our Exceptional Randos
very
live
easy
stream
for
on
people to
YouTube
conflate
every
the
Sunday
two
between 2 and 4
when it's
p.m.
like, yeah,
Eastern
you can get an
Standard Time.
animal to
If you have a
submit
story,
over time,
idea, or question that
but
you would like to
getting
share,
their
we
respect
want
is
to
way
hear from
better.
you. Oh yeah, thanks for listening. 100%.
Well, that was random.
Exceptional Radio.